you, Amrish.
Okay,
Thank
recording
you.
is on. Thank you, Danusha, Harold, for the introduction. Thanks everyone for showing up after a work day. I know for Jeff and I, it's the beginning of our day, so we're just getting started. Um, I do have one request, if it's okay, and it's totally optional. But when Jeff and I speak virtually like this, we we miss the days of speaking at in-person conferences. But one request we love is if they're willing and they're able and there's not some reason why you really don't want to turn your camera on, we would love it if you turned your camera on, because for us, we get energy feeding off of an audience, a real audience, like a human facial expression. And it just helps us as we're going through. It also, we can see if somebody wants to speak up, raise their hand, chime in. I always make the joke, if we don't have our cameras on, it's sort of like if we were at a conference hall, you'd all be wearing paper bags over your head with eye cutouts, and you could see us, but we can't see you. And it just feels a little awkward. So if you're able and willing, we would love it if you could turn your camera on, but completely optional.
The other thing I'd like to do, Chad, kind of just get a pulse of the room. And were you going to do the same thing?
No, Harold's putting a paper bag on his head.
Oh.
Look at all the cameras coming on. See, I love it. Facial expressions. People. There's people out there. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
All right, Jeff, so where were you going to go?
Yeah, I was going to go with, it always helps us to get a pulse of the room of, who are we talking to and what's people's background, so we kind of can speak at the right level. So if you wouldn't mind, just in the chat, just throw in, I don't know, are you a Scrum Master, product owner, manager, development team member, project manager? What's your current role today? And maybe how long have you been doing something in the Agile space? That would help us out. And we'll just watch those things kind of come into the chat as you enter them. So that'd be great. Okay, so we got some coach. So this talk that we're going to do today is really starting with the why and helping us remember what the why is, what we're optimizing for. Maybe sometimes we do things that don't optimize towards the why. And so this hopefully helps reveal that, maybe gives a different way of looking at it. And maybe if you know many of the things we're doing, maybe this gives you ideas of how to talk about it with those that don't in your organization or in other places as you try to spread the good news of agility. So
this is great. I'm seeing really good mix of people. I've got coaches, program managers, delivery managers, development team members, team coaches, on a culture team, Agile research student, coach, team coach. Love it. So we've got a nice mix of people in the room. So we're going to start where we almost start every talk we ever give. And as you can see from what I'm sharing here, what we're going to go through is essentially we're replicating when Jeff and I gave this talk pre remote days. We would have a flip chart on the stage and we would just build the talk as we go. Now we have a script in our head. We sort of know where we're going, but we also like the flexibility of taking this wherever we want to take it today. So feel free to speak up, ask questions as we go. We're going to try to involve you as much as possible. But we want to start by sort of deconstructing a word. And it's a pretty obvious word. I'm going to write it down here. So let's see if I can get that to show up on the screen because it's not for me yet. So there's a little delay.
Yeah, it's coming slowly. Okay,
yes,
so we might just have a little delay today as we do this.
Agile is the word. I'd like to hear from people, and I guess, Jeff, maybe just for the sake of not unmuting and muting, we'll just let people type it in the chat this first round.
Sure.
When you think of the word Agile, what are some other words that come to mind? We're going to try to capture them on this flip chart.
Mindset.
Cool. Mindset, okay. People, processes. Okay. I'm going to let Jeff write those. trust, gymnastics, yes, delivery, change, inspect and adapt, customer, tools and techniques, multitask, flexibility. I missed one up top. Customer centricity. Yeah, so we've got some customer stuff. We have process theme, people theme. Fail fast is a phrase was out there. Not sure if you captured flexibility yet, Jeff.
Yep, I got flexibility, survival.
Just be a delay. It's a pretty good list. Learning, awesome. Survival, proactive, learning faster, right? Okay, so there's a learning out there as well. That's awesome.
Yep. And I didn't get all of them, but constant planning. I like that.
Cool. Small independent tasks. A can-do attitude. Awesome.
Awesome.
So as you can see, there's a lot. We could probably go on for 2 to 5 more minutes and fill this screen with more words to describe this. But the reason Jeff and I do this at the beginning of a talk is when we see people having conversations around the word agile, they're typically the conversations are overloading the definition of that word. And what we'll see is sometimes people talking past each other. So one person will have mindset in their head, the other person will be thinking of a particular process, and they'll be arguing over the word agile with different definitions in their head, and so they don't get very far. So the reason we like to deconstruct this word at this point is to break it down and really show everybody that it's an overloaded word and it has many definitions. But the origins of the word, Jeff, maybe you can fly through a short story on this.
Yeah. So when people got together and they said, hey, we're doing these lightweight frameworks and we should come up with a name of this, and we should get together and say, hey, we're sharing a bunch of stuff. What are we going to call this? And so they got together and they actually booked the get together called lightweight methodologies. But, there's this thing, especially in the US, like you're a lightweight, it's kind of like you're weak. It's kind of this saying. So then they said, we don't like that. We're not going to call this lightweight, methodologies or lightweight frameworks. We're going to call this something else. And so the words they were thinking of were agile, responsive, and adaptive. Those are kind of the 3 words that they are like, what should we call this thing? And they settled on agile, but we always like to think about adaptive and responsive as 2 other words that are synonyms. And so when we're thinking about what we're optimizing for, agile's, being able to change directions really quickly, but so is responsive and adaptive, right? So we're talking about being able to pivot really quickly to change market conditions, technologies, whatever it might be. And so that's really kind of what we're after. And so, a lot of times the word agile gets overused, like Chad was saying, and it can be processes, it can be tools, it can be many other things for people. And so we just like to level set what we mean by agile. And so that's kind of what we're doing here today as we talk about these different words and what they mean. And so we like the word agility better than agile because it's like agility is a state of something. It's like you have agility. You don't. It's more about a being instead of something you do, and that's why we like the word agility a little better. So I don't know, Chad. Sometimes we draw this, I guess, out, but just this is a common misconception, and I kind of left this, with the explanation I just gave, where there's this thing called agile, and underneath agile there's things like Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, safe, less, Nexus, all the other scaling frameworks that are out there, all this stuff. And that's kind of just Agile's the overarching theme. So we like to draw that, slowly updating what I'm drawing here, but we like to draw this as an umbrella. So just keep that in mind. Most things in the Agile framework are Scrum. Like 80% of people doing something Agile are really just doing Scrum, but Agile is much bigger than that. It's a lot of other things that are part of that. We could go to design thinking. We can go to lean UX, lean startup, all those things I think all fit inside of this agile umbrella. They're all concepts we want to use. And so it's just a much broader term than just Scrum. So we'll kind of keep that together. So we've named it. We've talked about what it is.
And Jeff, I don't know if you stressed it, but 90% of all things agile are Scrum, and you can see that in some of the phrases we even said on the first panel, right? Sometimes we equate Scrum and Agile to be the same thing, but they're actually not, right? So inspect and adapt are actually pillars of empiricism that Scrum is formed on. They apply in many other Agile practices, but so many things. Sometimes when we use the phrase product owner, we think we're on an Agile team, but we don't use the phrase Scrum, and product owner comes from Scrum. So just going through this beginning and the origins of this, we typically find some value in sort of dispelling some myths about what Agile is. So we can't have any good conversation about Agile if we don't talk about what it is that maybe we're trying to move away from. And I know there is a delay here, Jeff, so if the more we can probably queue up. Sure. I did see a headline, by the way. I don't know if anyone else saw this. I saw a CNN headline that there was a massive internet outage. I don't know if anyone else saw that. But many websites were down around the world. So we might be experiencing a little bit of backup servers or something happening with Mural today. So when we talk about traditional development, I saw some people who have some background in program management, project management, I'm sure. Every organization uses different phrases or words for their phase gates. But most go through the following phases at some point in a traditional system development lifecycle phase-gated approach. Analysis, design, some development, some testing, and then eventually we would launch. Sound right to everybody? I mean, some companies come up with different names like concept phase, definition phase, but most of it is analysis, design, dev, test. Okay, and I used to be a project manager, by the way. I don't know if we mentioned that at the beginning. I used to be a business analyst, and I used to be a computer programmer. So waterfall, when you think about waterfall, we use that phrase to describe phase-gate approaches. And Jeff, if you want to draw some waterfall on the left side there flowing down, right? You think water doesn't flow back up a waterfall. It goes in one direction. And the idea in a phase-gate approach is that we do all of our due diligence, we do the best we can, all the right analysis that we think is right through each phase to understand as much as possible and to get approval to move on to the next phase. And so that's what we're really doing here. We're just moving through. And then when we launch at the bottom there, that's typically where we hope to realize the value, because we don't realize value after a design. You can't sell a design in the market, right? Unless you're a design add some design company. So down at the bottom is where we see the value, and that can take months to years sometimes to realize that. And if your organization was structured this way, it's only logical, as Jeff has drawn here, how would we staff our organization? Well, we need people who know how to do analysis, so we probably will hire business analysts. And we need design, so we'll hire systems analysts. And we need development, so we'll hire programmer analysts. I'm just trying to use industry standard terms here. And testing, we need quality assurance specialists. So we staff our organization according to the way we're working. And a lot of times these will be teams or departments dedicated to that specialty skill set. Okay? Everyone with me? So, great. So, as we move over to the right panel here, what is the problem with this? I haven't really stated anything too strongly or negative yet, but what's the problem with this approach? I mean, we're at an Agile meetup. We're assuming that we're shifting away from something like this. So why? You can chat or you can unmute and chime in.
Silos.
Silos?
Yeah.
Okay. Silos. And what do silos cause? So, okay, why silos? So, silos of specialty skill sets is, I believe, what you're hinting at. Long waiting time, great. So let's capture wait time. I love that. There's handoffs. So there's handoff delay, which translates to wait time on the calendar. Big bang changes in testing squeezed. Absolutely. Big bang approach. Whenever there's months to years that go by, that's a big bang delivery approach. Rigid to change. Absolutely. If something happened up in the analysis phase and now down in the development phase, we discover something needs to change, what do we typically have to do? I know when I was a project manager, I would go to my stakeholders and I'd say, well, that when you signed off on that business requirement specification 7 months ago, you said this. So I'm going to, and I would slide a piece of paper across the desk and say, I'm going to need you to sign this change request. Right? So very rigid, very rigid. No customer feedback. Absolutely. Deliver the wrong item and only at the end that we know. Yes, absolutely. Not meeting customer requirements. Same theme. So, okay, great. There's silos. The silos I will translate to there's coordination costs here, right? When you have skills across different areas, teams, departments, you have to bring them together in a project team and you have to coordinate those things. So there's handoffs between phases. There's handoffs between teams. So yeah, it translates to a lot of waste in the overall product delivery. Okay. And I think we have a delay. I'm sure Jeff has written more than that, but it's just trickling in here.
Oh yeah, there's more in there. Just
yep.
Take a while.
This is the slowest I have seen this tool in many, many months, maybe never. Okay, so bear with us there. That's going to slowly populate, but you're following along with what we're saying. So, okay, if this is the problem, right, then what is the goal? What are we trying to do? So we want Agile? What does that mean? Why do we want Agile?
What's the benefit? What's our optimizing goal by doing Agile? Like, what are we trying to fix?
So we don't want long wait times. We don't want coordination cost. We don't want big bang approach. We don't want the customer to get the wrong thing. So what do we want? And the answer isn't just the opposite of all those things. So there must be something else. What is it? Earlier release.
Yeah.
Create value that is engaging for our customers and the people creating it. Quick and frequent delivery. Okay. Efficiency and constant payment from customer. I like that. That's getting at a little bit of we have to be profitable as an entity, a company. Customer satisfaction. Continuous improvement. Greater adaptability to change. Greater visibility. Okay. So great. Some of those things are describing agility, right? We want to be able to adapt, be flexible, turn quickly as needed for the customer, satisfy the customer, continuously improve. Those are all components of agility. Why do you want agility? Just because it's the thing to do? It's popular? Perform better? Okay. Remove waste. Assuming you're working for some type of organization, and when I say organization, I'm just referring to many people working towards a common cause, mission, right? Whether you're in the nonprofit or sector or not, you have to be profitable to continue to exist. So what we're hinting at is there's business outcomes that are driving you seeking out agility, likely. And most of those translate to we have to have profit. We're trying to solve a problem in the world, right? Whatever it is that our product solves, we're trying to keep our customers satisfied. Um, so yeah, we've captured, I'd say, 2 to 3 of those core reasons for seeking this out. Okay. Um, there'll be a delay here again, I'm sure, Jeff. So how do we accomplish that goal then? Where does everybody shop in Mauritius? Where do you? This is probably a silly question. Do you have like Targets and WalMarts? I just
Similar,
don't
similar.
know. Where do you shop? Like if you need to go buy some laundry detergent or some clothes or something like that. Are there those any typical
Yeah,
stores you would go to?
Intermart, and then mostly Carrefour. I don't know if you.
Not familiar, but what
Yeah.
Danusha said. Imagine you go there. Do you just go and like browse the store shelves, and then like you buy some Agile off the shelf, and you go install that in your organization? Is that how we accomplish this? You just buy Agile, or do you just go buy an Agile transformation? You go to a consultant company and say, "Hey, I need a transformation. How much does the transformation cost, and when will it be done?" That sounds a little waterfall, doesn't it? I hope I'm not offending anybody. I'm joking and poking at our entire industry a little bit here, including Jeff and I. So, okay, what do we have to do? Is it just an agile transformation? Is that it? And then we just trust that that's going to work? Nope. Great. Danusha says nope.
Nope.
All right. So yeah, it's not, and we don't have to capture necessarily everything because we're going to go in and try to reveal the answer. But what from this point forward in the talk, what we're really going to try to unveil to you are the core components that Jeff and I have seen after years and years of doing this and learning from all the other people who have been doing this for decades. What makes agility possible? What improves on a spectrum of not agile and very agile? What moves you down that spectrum of improving and becoming more agile day by day? And every single pattern we always point to has to do with a few core things. And they're shared across more things than Scrum, right? Scrum, Kanban, any extreme programming, anything that you have that you might call an agile team is probably going to share some of these components. Anybody want to take a stab at one of the cores?
So I'm kind of writing them already, Chad, because it's been so slow to update, but I see it's coming through slowly now as I've finished it actually a while ago. But so delivery, how about that one? Let's start with that first core one. Like, why is delivery so important to get to agile, but to be agile, be responsive to change? Any thoughts? To get feedback, exactly. And so there's this whole mindset shift, and we talk mindset, but what do we really mean by that? From going from an analysis mindset to a feedback mindset. Accepting the world is complex and building products is very complex, and we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know, how things are going to respond. We don't know what the technology is going to do. We're going to run into things that are unforeseen. And so doing a bunch of analysis can only get us so far. So if we can just do it, get some feedback, we can learn a lot faster. So accelerating that feedback loop in everything we do is really what delivery allows us to do. So one of the secrets is frequent delivery so we can get feedback. Okay. It also reduces risk, which was one of the other things we added over on the left. Because as you do smaller releases, there's less chances of bigger things going wrong. When you're doing a big bang release, it's like the stars and the moons have to all align and everything has to go exactly perfect for this to go off, without any problems. But when we do small things and we do it frequently, we get really good at it, and it just becomes a non-event. Okay, so that's one of them. How about the next one? Focus. Why is focus so important? Any thoughts on that? I don't know how it is in Mauritius, but over in the US, but in the traditional approach, there'd be oftentimes people would be on 5, 6, 7 projects at a time when we were going down the traditional path. And so you'd be doing development on 7 projects at a time. And it'd be like, oh, spend an hour here today, then an hour here, and then an hour here. And let's go to a meeting about this other thing for an hour. And then, oh, maybe I'll hit that back tomorrow and I'll start developing on it. And they were always switching directions because we were managing the work to the people instead of getting the people to focus on solving a problem. And so we can change that and we say, let's just get a team together that's focused on solving customer problems and not worry about how busy everybody is, but really focusing on how we solve the problem. We can accelerate that problem solving time and our time to market, which then gives us time to get frequent delivery and then see, did we build the right thing? And should we go continue down that path or not continue down that path in the future? So focus is a really big thing, like focusing on that problem.
So people and skills we're gonna get there in a few moments when we talk about teams and what kind of teams we want to be forming, right? But essentially anything Agile requires that you get all the skills you need to solve the problem in front of you. And if you don't have that, that means you have to coordinate, and you're right back to where we were a few flip charts ago in waterfall world, where we are coordinating handoffs, coordinating with vendors, coordinating with people outside of our team. And all of that coordination cost adds waste to our product delivery.
Because specialty is the enemy of agility. And I'll say that again because a lot of people are like, what? What do you mean by that? Specialty is the enemy of agility. The more specialized an individual skill set is, they can only do one thing or two things. And that gives you a lot less flexibility on what you can do and what problems you can solve. And so you might only be able to do the one portion of that solution. And then if we try to keep that person busy, we're going to end up working on things that are maybe not the most important or most valuable for the organization. We're going to start a lot of stuff, but we're probably not going to finish a lot of things. And because we've started a lot of things, then a lot of other people start doing other things. And a lot of things just slowly get done and we don't deliver any value, or very slowly deliver value, and we don't get frequent delivery. So then we can't learn fast, right? So it's just this loop that kind of starts happening. If we focus on specialties and we really try to keep people busy, we tend to focus on low value things.
And then accelerating learning is a component. Again, this shows up in frameworks like Scrum, very obvious. There's a retrospective. When I was a project manager, the learning, if it happened at all, happened in this thing called a post-mortem. It was like a retrospective, but it happened at the very end of a project. And sometimes projects were multiple years. And honestly, in the projects that I was involved in, so much time had passed that anything that we pulled from that retrospective hardly ever got acted upon because it was just so far away from the moment that it actually happened. Mm-hmm. And people are usually tired after a project. And the other thing is that after a project, the project team typically disassembles and starts on another project. So there's no time for improvement. I'm sharing some of my experiences. I'm not saying that you can't have some productive improvements on a project, but the fact is, if you're not doing it throughout, you're only giving yourself an opportunity to improve however long your average project length is, which is typically not very much in a phase-gated approach. Months to years. So learning, there's always a learning component when it comes to accomplishing the goal. So let's segue. I'm going to go down to this panel here, and I tried to pre-prep it here a little bit, Jeff, so that we can save some time. So let's hear from everybody. When you think of the word project versus product, what makes a successful project? So, for those that are in project management, I was in project management. The end of the project, someone says, "What a successful project. That was great." What do they mean by that? What makes it successful?
On time.
On time. Great.
Yep.
Positive feedback from customer. Yes, I hope. Promise met. Deliver on time. Requirements. So there's a scope, right? We hit the scope. And then within budget. Great. So we've hit the triangle. On time, scope, and under budget. Anyone familiar with PMI? So goals achieved, customers happy, great. All of those. So there's some customer component, there's quality, and then there's the time cost scope of the iron triangle. Okay. Is that everyone's experience? Do you always hit on time, on budget, the scope that the customer wanted, and you delight your customers? Do most projects end that way? Somebody says never. Exclamation point, never. Rarely, yes. So my story, my experience proves that it doesn't, and not proves. My experience is that it doesn't, and it sounds like others have similar experiences on Mars. So when I was a project manager, I'll tell this brief story, and then we'll transition to product, Jeff.
Yep.
When I was a project manager, I had a number one project in the portfolio, right? Got everything I wanted. I could walk around and ask for people to be added to my project team, and all the executives would say yes, because we have to make sure this project moves forward. And it was a multi-year effort. I was the fourth or fifth project manager assigned to it. It spent years just in requirements analysis. When we finally got it released, it was mostly on time, mostly under budget, but it was a disaster for the business stakeholders who needed it to work for them. It wasn't what they wanted. The scope had been cut so drastically, and the requirements had been missed so badly that it didn't hit the mark, right? The product didn't hit the mark. Sadly, and somewhat shamefully, I won an award as a project manager. Because what did I do? By the measurements of a successful project, I did well. And I didn't do anything. I mean, I was the project manager. All the people did the work. So it's one of those awards you win where you don't even want to go up on stage to receive it. And when you get it, you pretty much want to throw it in the trash, right? I'm sharing this story because maybe there's some other people who have had similar experiences, and this is probably what led me into the career I'm in right now, where I was done with the days of death march projects where people were unhappy, the customer was unhappy, employees were unhappy, and I'm winning awards for successful projects. Okay? So, let's try to shift this to positivity now. As we move away from that, what defines a successful product? How do we measure a successful product? It should be different than the things we've highlighted on the left.
Happy customers.
Okay, great. Happy customers. Address customers' needs. Bug-free. So we've got similar things in what we said before as desires. We want happy customers and high quality. Great user experience. Customer value. I like this, Elise. I like this a lot. You're creating customer value in a way that you can monetize. Happy customer and good for the organization, right? Win-win. Usability brings value to the customer. Great. So again, in my story, those components were missing, right? Actually, they failed on almost all fronts. The customer wasn't happy, and the employees weren't happy. So, and then profitability for the company, I would say after many, many years on that project, it was probably not worth what we delivered, right? There were a lot of payroll cycles and a lot of invoices paid to contracted staff that resulted in what? A product that the customer didn't want. So many, I have so many colleagues and friends who have similar stories. Millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars spent on these projects over several years and nothing really to show for it, right? Sometimes they've even, I have a friend who had $50 million project got canceled. So they never even made it to delivery. Okay, so see, I'm getting negative again. All these old battle wounds from my project management days. Okay.
The other thing to think about is projects tend to be very internal focused. The success measure is internal. Did I make the stakeholders happy? Internal stakeholders? Did I do the thing that was requested? not that I solved the problem. Where products is a very external focus. Like, did we monetize something, solve a problem for a customer and monetize it so that we made a profit? Like, that's a good measure of success. Did we make customers happy? Did we delight them? Did we solve a problem in the world, especially for a nonprofit? Like, did we make the world a better place? Like, those are the things that are going to make you successful in a product. Very external focused and very hard to game or something on the product side versus something on the project side. Chad's story is one that we've heard often, actually, as we talk to different people that run many different projects across the world. And that, within the measure of success inside of the organization, very successful, but externally not successful at all. Like, it doesn't solve the problem. It actually makes things worse a lot of the times. But on the product side, it's very clear. Yeah, if we have a successful product, we know it, right? Because people like it, it's usable, it solves a problem, and we make money off of it. So those are things to think about. So when we're talking about from an agile approach, we want to focus more from moving from projects to products, because that has us really focus on a long-term perspective of like what's best for our customers, what's best for our organization, and try to find those win-wins instead of just like this temporary thing where we're trying to, just do this temporary set of features to solve some request.
So I don't know what everyone's experience in the room is, but I continue to cringe, and I mean this with love, so I don't hurt. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I cringe when I hear the phrase agile project, because I truly don't understand what someone means when they say that. How can a project be agile? How can a project demonstrate agility? Right? Agility is all about the people, the delivery, the team of people with the right skills delivering something of value for that product. So let's move into that, because this is the core component. Moving into cross-functional teams. A cross-functional team is at the core of all things agile. In every case where Jeff and I have seen agility on that spectrum, high levels of agility, there is always a focused cross-functional team with a learning mindset. I'm going to jump back up to this panel here while Jeff's drawing. A focused cross-functional team with the right skills, all the skills we need to avoid handoffs and coordination costs, improving as they go, and delivering frequently. That's what makes agility. And the reason Scrum and Agile get lumped together so often is that Scrum as a framework hit the mark on this decades ago. Before the story we told about the Agile Manifesto in 2001, getting together and coming up with all these words and frustrated software professionals, starting this revolution, Scrum came half a decade before. 1995 and in the early 90s, Ken and Jeff were experimenting with it. So, and even then, what influenced, people are, I'm sure, familiar with the HBR article from 1986, the new product development game, that influenced Scrum. And in that article, if you haven't read that, I highly recommend, if you're in any coaching or Scrum Master position, go back to the source material and read that article through. It's still great. But it talks about cross-functional teams, multi-skilled learning individuals, the value of focusing instead of multitasking. So we've had that laid out for us so many years. We keep finding new words to throw around in Agile since the manifesto was formed. So Jeff's, it looks like our drawing is catching up here. So when we say cross-functional team, let's just use a software example. When we say cross-functional team, we need all the skills to bring that product to a done state, a shippable state for our customers every single iteration we're using. So we need to do that analysis. We have to do that design work, that development, the testing. We're probably going to need some subject matter expertise from maybe stakeholders surrounding our team, and we bring them in as needed, or they're a permanent fixture on our team. User experience, right? Anybody, architecture, any infrastructure skill set. That's not a separate department that we send a request for and ask them how long until delivery. We have that skills on our team, right? And the more skills you bring into that team, focused, long-lived, stable, cross-functional team, the more agility we can expect. Okay.
So what we're the thing here is we want a real team. We want a basketball team. So a lot of organizations, they go out and they have golf teams. They work groups really is what we would call them. And everyone goes out and shoots their own round of golf. And then we add our scores up at the end and we hope that we did well. What we're really saying is we want a basketball team, something that's where everyone's interdependent, where everybody dribbles, everybody passes, everybody plays defense. We're all working towards one goal, scoring, stopping the opponent from scoring. And we all have different skills inside of that, but we're focusing on that one goal together. And so we need all the skills here. That's cross-functional. That's required, to get started. But the next one on the bottom here is more the multi-skilled. And so what we're talking about is those people that can dribble, pass, play defense, shoot. There's different skills and different depths and breadths that they have in these skills. But having many of those skills and putting many of those people on a team together that have different depths and breadths and are willing to flex different skills depending on the need to solve the customer problem, that's where you can unlock a whole nother level of agility. So what we're talking about is people that are willing to flex into many different things and don't feel like they need to be a 10 out of 10. Like maybe I'm a 5 out of 10 in C#, and I'd rather code in Java, but I can do it, and that's what we're working on today. And that's the problem we need to solve. And it needs C# because that's what the system uses. That's a great thing to have multiple skills that you can flex into that. So you don't then move over and start something that's maybe the 10th or 20th ranked thing on our backlog. We can focus on the highest ranked thing, get that done, solve that problem, get feedback on it, and decide if we want to solve it again. So that's what we're talking about here with multi-skilled versus cross-functional. Moving to multi-skilled takes time, takes focused effort to build those skills up. And you also need to be very conscious of what skills you are building and why. One of the things Chad and I often recommend that teams do is track where you need a skill. Maybe track even work item age, how long does it take for something to get done when you start something? And if the reason that it takes so long on some of your ones that are your outliers is because we only have one person or two people that know that skill, that might be a case where we need to build up that skill in other people in our teams. And now that we've revealed that, now it's as a team, figure out how you're going to handle that. So sometimes it's just a matter of knowing what skills are needed, because not all skills, not everybody needs to be great at everything. That's unrealistic, but figuring out where your bottlenecks are and what's slowing you down, and then optimizing towards that is a really valuable thing here when we're talking about people and skills.
Okay. So assuming we've assembled a cross-functional team, right? And if some people are like, yeah, we knew this, then that's great. But the reason we continue to deliver this talk in 2021, 2 decades after the manifesto, is that we continue to run into companies where they take Scrum and they throw it on top of a project team, or they take Scrum and they throw it on top of an infrastructure team or a component team, the design team, the testing team, the analysis team, just the team that does coding. And what they deliver is just a piece of work in process. So if you're really seeking agility, we're here just as a reminder to say it has everything to do with a cross-functional team. From this point forward, the rest of the things are going to be icing on the cake, because it doesn't matter. The rest of the things matter that we're going to talk about, but if you don't have this, you won't even be able to get to the other components we're going to talk about, with the exception of learning. I guess you could have this in a very poor state and you continue to learn, but this is what's really going to yield the agility that we're after. So again, like Jeff said, if you're struggling with this, one mantra you can take on is there's a couple of metaphors. In a race where you're running around a track and passing a baton to your teammates, a relay race, focus on the baton, not the runners. If I run the best relay of my life, but my team drops the baton, we lose the race. The baton is the work, the piece of value that we want to deliver to the market. Focus on what's the other analogy, Jeff? In soccer, or I don't know if it's football, probably.
Yeah.
In Mauritius, in America, we call it soccer, right? But American football. Soccer ball. Focus on the ball, not the players. The ball goes through the goal. The ball makes money for the organization, right? Puts a score on the scoreboard. A player having a great game, but his team losing, right? It doesn't matter. So the shift here is, if we focus on keeping people busy, that means nothing. We can keep people busy and run through payroll cycles, like I said, on those projects, and no value is delivered. If we focus on the product itself, the value delivery, whenever you notice the value delivery is halted or stopped, or if you're a Scrum Master, this would mean there's an impediment to us moving forward, find out what that is. And if it has anything to do with a lack of a cross-functional skill, your job immediately is to figure out how to bring that skill into your team so that doesn't continue to be an impediment, right? So you can kind of work your way into this if you're struggling to start with a fully stable, focused, cross-functional team. Okay, so assuming you're on your path with that, our next question for us to consider: what is the one and only way to deliver value? We're looking for, this could be a one-word response, right? Anyone bold want to put themselves out there and try to guess what's in our heads? It's a tough one. One and only one. Okay.
Feedback. So how do we get the feedback? We want that.
Collaboration. Know what the customers want. Those are desires. Those are great.
Delivery, Harold says.
Delivery is sort of what we're saying in the question. How do we deliver value? We deliver, but how do we deliver the value?
Meet specs. We could meet the specs, but not actually have it in anyone's hands, right? And that wouldn't provide value. If we got an increment, we got something that's done, but it's not in someone's hands. They can't use it. There's no value there for a customer, right? Like, I'm not willing to pay for something I can't actually use.
I love the theme around customer, but how do we know? We can guess at what the customer wants all day long.
Customer satisfaction, customer centricity. Yes, it's all about the customer, but the only way to know what the customer wants or if they're satisfied is to do what? Ask. Okay.
Ask is okay, but I'm gonna come back to that one in a few minutes. Usability testing, customer feedback. Yes, so we're close, but how do we get customer feedback? Do we just ask them, what do you want? Jeff's writing it. Release. Harold's close, or whoever said deliver is very close. Okay, I'm going to throw 3 words out that are pretty synonymous. Release, ship, deliver. Essentially, take the product or service that you have built and give it to your customers in a real live environment. That's the only way to deliver value, and here's why. Assuming you're using something like Scrum or Scrum, you have a product backlog, a list of things that you want to do. And everyone always says, well, you order your product backlog by value. How do we know that it's valuable? Because the customer told us? Because we documented the requirement? How do we know that that's valuable?
That's assumed value. You don't actually realize the value until you deliver it to them and you release. Once you've released it, then we can validate, does this solve the problem? Does this do it effectively? You know, how are people using the feature? Are they happy when they use it? Like, those are all things we can test and validate. But until you actually do it in production, you won't know. And people will tell you they want something, or that this solved their problem, or this could solve their problem. But until they have it in their hands, you don't know that they will really pay for it. There was a client I walked into, and they had spent a year building out this product for people that were loan officers, people that like work at banks and help people go through the lending process. And it was like to gamify it for them. And they had worked with these couple strategic customers, large banks, to build this out. And they got to the point where like, cool, well, we've got all these features. We've been working on this a year together. This is what it costs now. Are you guys ready, to start actually paying us for it? And they're like, no. We thought we were just helping you out. Like, we would never pay for something like this. It's like, oh my gosh, like we spent a year building this thing and you helped us every single week. We would deliver stuff to you, but you wouldn't pay for it now. Like, how do we not make something you're not willing to pay for? And so they had to make a big pivot then and change a bunch of things because they never validated how much somebody was willing to pay for it. They got their feedback, but they sure didn't validate people would pay for it. So that's kind of gets us maybe into our next thing. It's like, how do you accelerate your learning without maybe even with releasing, but as you're building out a product? And so this is called the, I'm blanking on the name. This is called the truth curve. And so basically what this shows is all the stuff underneath this are things you can do to validate that you're going to meet the customer's need and get feedback. And so there's lots and lots of ways here to say, do we make a build decision? Yes or no? Do we go forward or do we not go forward? So it could be simple as like asking a customer, interviewing them. That's a low level thing. And maybe you increase your probability you hit the mark if you do an interview, but there's still a lot of things that could go wrong. Maybe you actually show them a paper prototype or make a cardboard cutout. This is how it would actually work on your phone or your app if you were doing it. And you kind of walk somebody through it and see how they would use it. Maybe you advertise it, just say, hey, buy this now. Will somebody actually click and try to buy it? And you can have a button that goes to nowhere. I had one client where we were building a product and we had this idea that we were going to interface with like all these credit unions, which are like inside of the United States to help with the loan process. And we created this button like fill out your loan now, and it would accelerate the process. And it was going to cost multi-billions of dollars to like build out this feature for everyone to use. It took us 2 hours to put a button out there that said, do it now. And then we were going to track and see how long it took us to get so many people to click on it. And it was like 1% of the people going through this process would click on that button. And so we had a no build decision. We're not going to build that feature and spend millions of dollars for less than 1% of the people to actually click it and use it. And so sometimes this button can stop you from spending lots of money. Or maybe you create a landing page is another one that I've used a lot, where it's like, hey, there's a lot of infrastructure in place, a lot of problems to get something out into production. First sprint, let's just get a one page to production and actually just to prove we can deploy to production. Once we've done that, we should be able to deploy very easily every single sprint because we already got everything there. We've got a database, we've got the services in production, we've got, everything we need to say, we've got these servers in place. So there's nothing new that needs to be added, or maybe it's just one more server or one more thing. We're not doing everything from scratch the first time. So that could be a way to do this, but there's lots of examples here where you can mitigate risk along the way, even if you're not going out to the wide scale market to everybody. And so this is one way to increase your learning and decide, do I continue or do we pivot and make a change?
So
anybody use this?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask the question. Has anyone used this before? Any stories about kind of using things underneath the truth curve here to validate, do we have product market fit? Are we moving in the right direction as we're building out a product or a feature or a set of features? Anybody have any experience doing some of this stuff?
Harold's giving a thumbs up.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, so the theme here is the more we can validate all the assumptions that live on our product backlogs, the more opportunities we're going to have for improvement, adaptability, and responsiveness to change. And getting it right for our customer, right? I mean, the number of people who, when we were asking for the one word on how to deliver value, said something about the customer, that's all great. Very aspirational that we want that. But the only way to know is by actually validating it. So we can validate before we even build by the truth curve. And when we are building, if we're not validating as we're going, you are building a pile of assumptions up. And a pile of assumptions is a pile of risk. And whether you're a project manager or an agile coach Scrum Master or a product owner, nobody wants risk, right? We want to minimize the risk. And so if you took anything away from today, real cross-functional teams and closing that feedback loop of delivering as often as possible are two of your fast tickets to agility. And if you're struggling, I would set those as your target and work through continuous improvement efforts to move closer and closer to those states. Frameworks like Scrum map it out for you. I mean, we're professional Scrum trainers, so we're probably biased, but there's a reason 90% of all things Agile are Scrum. It works. The framework is very good at what it does if you follow it. If you cut it up into pieces and try to reassemble it and make it your own, or run some Agile hybrid approach, it may work, but proceed with caution, because the framework is very lightweight and is designed quite well. And the fact that it has a continuous improvement mechanism built into it in the sprint retrospective is even better, right? We find that Scrum isn't just a silver bullet solution. It's not something that you just, again, buy off the shelf and, well, yeah, we started with Scrum and 6 months later, everything's perfect. What Scrum is really good at is exposing to your team and your organization all of the wasteful things that you've been doing. And it gives you an opportunity to do something about it. But it doesn't solve the problems for you. You've got to do the hard work. Danusha asked about Scrumban. Yeah, more and more these days, the question over and over again, Jeff and I spoke at a conference yesterday about, where this came up. The question in the audience was something about, how do you know whether you should use Kanban or Scrum? We more and more are proponents of both. Like, Kanban's all about optimizing flow. And if you're a Scrum team and you're not thinking about optimizing flow, why not? Like, we'd be concerned. So there's some hard differences, and maybe depending on whether you're just the complexity of your work, whether you're in a complicated space or a complex space, may make more sense. But yeah, we're seeing more and more utilize the goodness from Kanban with your Scrum team. Steal some things from Scrum if you're purely Kanban right now. There are amazing things in both.
Yeah. So Scrum is based off empiricism, right? And Kanban's based off of a flow. When you have flow, you're going to enhance your empiricism because you're going to get rapid feedback. You're going to get more inspection points. When you have flow, you're going to be able to have more empiricism. So like, you're going to be able to also enhance your inspection and adaptation. So they really do work together really, really well. And it really is rarely one or the other. It really is both. They're going to accelerate each other.
All right, Jeff, time check. We want to make sure we leave 15 minutes for questions, and there's nothing wrong if we want to shift to that a little earlier. I'm fine, because I feel like if we get into the scaling, demand, and delivery, we can spend quite a bit of time there, and maybe the questions will lead us there anyway. So yeah, I think maybe we kick it over to everybody at this point and see what's on everyone's mind. I know we've been trying to get feedback from you within the chat, but I'd love to hear some voices out there. What's on your mind? What questions do you have? What'd you like? What'd you dislike? Let's have a conversation with the time we have remaining. We have plenty of open virtual flip charts, so we can keep taking this wherever we want to go.
So Harold, your question about extreme programming and Kanban without Scrum, thoughts on this? So I think the extreme programming will get you to technical excellence. You'll have consistent flow. What I would be cautious of is, are you building the right thing? And are you validated in the market? Are you using an empirical process to deliver your product? And so a lot of times we think of Scrum and I don't know, people think of, you're just the delivery team. You just do the delivery. But what happens to the product management? What happens to product market fit? How are we aligning to the strategy of the product that we're building? How are we connecting all those things together and inspecting and adapting whether we're building the right thing at the right time? So that would be my fear of what you would miss if you did that. Like, you wouldn't be thinking about the big picture in the market. But if you could do that with using those things, that'd be great. That's just what I'd watch out for.
And part of our talk today is really to not present anything as a one size fits all solution. There are many frameworks out there. Again, we think Scrum works well. We help our clients with it, but we go well beyond that as well. We really just hope you can see the overlap across all the frameworks and processes and methodologies. They share a few common themes: cross-functional teams, delivering often, and some type of improvement mechanism. And if you do that, we don't care what you call it.
Yeah, and really focus too, right? Like Kanban's using work in progress limits and work item age to give you focus. Scrum's using sprints. They're just two different ways to get focus. Like their goals are the exact same. And they still have the cross-functional teams. You still have the frequent delivery, all that good stuff. So, yeah.
I love this question. Do you think there is a need for an explicit risk management in the Scrum framework? So I think the Scrum framework is your risk management. This is another, I was poking fun at some courses I saw online a few months ago, maybe it was a year ago with Jeff. And I hope, again, I don't offend anybody. I used to be a project manager, so I feel like I can say some of these things because I've been in the trenches. There's courses out there you can go attend called like Agile Project Management Risk or something like that. And I just kind of shake my head because it's like, again, what does that mean? What is managing risk on an Agile project? Why don't you just give Scrum a try? And so what I mean by that is here's how Scrum mitigates and manages risk. It's 30 days or less, what we call a sprint. If you want to translate that to weeks, because they're predictable throughout a calendar year, 4 weeks or less is Scrum. If you're doing a 5-week sprint, I just wouldn't call that Scrum because that's not what the framework intends. So most of the world uses 2-week sprints. Okay, that alone, and relating this to Kanban, in Kanban you manage WIP, you set WIP limits. Well, Scrum has a WIP limiter. It's limiting how much you pull in within a 2-week period. Let's say if you're using 2-week sprints. So there you go. You're managing your WIP. That's managing risk. And then we demand that we have something that's done, quote unquote, which means it's potentially shippable and usable. We can hand it to our customers and get feedback, validate our assumptions. So we're managing risk there as well, right? Instead of that long cycle of analysis and development and testing and waiting and hoping that we get it right, we're validating all the time. And because Scrum says you can't go more than a month without validating, then you're managing risk. So I don't think there needs to be an explicit call out in Scrum for risk management. The entire framework is helping you manage risk if you're doing it well. If you're really, and by the way, for anybody, we haven't really talked about all of Scrum in any components, but the game changer in Scrum, we say this like multiple times in the courses we teach, so I'll just reveal it now. The game changer in Scrum is getting to that usable increment, that tangible value product that we can actually release and deliver every single sprint. If you are not getting there, you're missing out on all the benefits that make Scrum popular. If you're using Scrum, but it takes you several months or several sprints to get to something that's tangible and ready to release, you have a lot of a continuous improvement opportunity. You have a lot of improvement opportunities. So I hope, did I answer the question? See if I get a validation here. Okay, thank you. Was there another one that came in?
Yeah, the next question is how do we create a good product roadmap with continuous customer feedback? So a common pattern that we see is a lot of times people just create this roadmap that's got features in it and it's got dates across the top and it's like, we're going to deliver these features on this time. And that's a common problem, I feel like, because a lot of these teams are just, they're thought of as just execution teams. Just, you're going to be feature lumberjacks. You're just going to knock down these features left and right and just keep cranking them out without the validation. Unless you're in a very stable market with a very stable product, I wouldn't go with that approach. I like to have goals on my roadmap and say, this is the goal we're after. Maybe here's like a product goal, and like, here's a measurable, tangible thing we're trying to hit. And here's some features we think that might solve that problem. And we're going to do some of those. And then we're going to actually, now we know what we want to measure, how we want to learn something. And then we're going to validate, did we hit that mark or not? And we might do a few things, then take a break and then do a few more things. I also like to use, don't put dates on my roadmap, and like to use more like a now, next, later. So we're going to do this now, then we're going to do this next, then we're going to do this later. Because I don't know how long it's going to take to hit this goal. We might hit it with the first thing we put out there, and we might get the outcome we're looking for, and then we're going to move on to the next thing. Or it might take 5 or 6 different features to hit that goal. I'm not sure. We might need some time to just let something sit in the market too, and say like, it needs time to, validate, do we hit the mark or not? So I think there's context there. And especially when you're in a market that's changing, or with a product that's newer, or you're trying to find a new market fit or new position in the market, that goal-oriented roadmap helps people focus on what we're really trying to accomplish, and then figuring out how we're going to do that is another thing. And so at least we can align on what's the most important problem to solve. And I like focusing on that instead of thinking, feature A or feature B are going to be the thing that solve our problem. That might be where our disagreement is, and it might be hard to get to that point if you're talking in terms of features.
What other questions do you have? Is there really a difference between, I learned that Scrum is one of the ways of becoming agile. So Agile and Scrum. Okay.
Yep. So Scrum is one framework inside of the Agile umbrella, but so is extreme programming and Kanban and all the scaling frameworks and design thinking and systems thinking and all kind lean UX. Like all those things are all really part of this Agile umbrella. And so Agile's broader than Scrum. So just keep that in mind. I guess, a lot of people, the world will use them interchangeably. Just know that, the words do mean different things.
Agile is a set of, it's more of a mindset in that it's a set of 4 values and 12 principles. agilemanifesto.org, right? So that's what it is. It's a manifesto. It's a movement. It's something that you aspire towards. And then there's all kinds of practices within that word since then. If you're interested, Jeff Sutherland, co-creator of Scrum, the way he's described it when I've seen him speak before is extreme programming was experimented with throughout the 90s, and Scrum was formed and experimented with and formulated into what it is in the 90s. So he describes, even though Agile has become more of a ubiquitous term, well beyond software development, and it's more in business now, it was the origins. He sees extreme programming and Scrum as the father and mother of Agile, right? That word was born out of those 2 major frameworks. So I wasn't around during that time to know, but that's what Jeff Sutherland, how he sees it. But I would say most often Agile and Scrum they become synonymous, right? Because we say things like my Agile team, right? I was talking to my product owner on my Agile team, and then Jeff and I are going to go, okay, they said product owner, so they're probably using something like Scrum or Scrum, but they called it an Agile team. We should find out what they mean by that, right? So just words matter, but the context of the conversation we have around the words matters more. So, if you're in a coaching situation, which I saw some coaches, the power of questioning in general, questioning and listening, is how you discover what's going on in someone's head. If we stop at the superficial words we use, conversations, aren't going to get very deep, and there probably won't be deep, impactful change. So it's really seeking out a deep understanding of what's actually going on in the environment around us helps us improve it. Taking a systems thinking approach.
There's quite some questions.
Okay, more.
Yes. Let's talk about, can you tell us about the application of Agile on non-digital digital teams. So I'll give a few examples of stuff that's out there. So Tesla uses Agile to build cars, to build factories, to build anything, right? And they basically are creating cross-functional teams that are working in small feedback loops. At Tesla, they do 3-hour sprints, and they do 12-hour days. And so they have 4 sprints a day, and that's how they operate. Saab, that creates like fighter jets and stuff like that, they use Agile to build, build new fighter jets and to test and learn and to figure out what's going to work. There's companies like a lot of marketing companies are using Agile. We have a friend of ours who was recently in Azerbaijan, which is a small country, probably more familiar than I had to look up where it was when he first said it, in the Middle East, and working for a major oil company. And they're using Scrum to get oil out of the ground. And so basically what they had to do, the main thing was get 30 like doctorate, specialty, master level people together that are very, very technical in their skill sets, create a cross-functional team. And they were able, they used to get oil out of the ground in like 18 to 24 months from one of those big oil rigs. They can now do it in like, I think he said 8 to 12 weeks. So it goes that much faster just because, they actually have everybody, there's no delays in the system. They have a cross-functional team working on one problem instead of trying to keep everybody busy. So some pretty major improvements that people have seen when you use it even outside of the digital realm, right? It works in so many spaces.
All right, next question. With multiple Agile teams, how do we eliminate functional silos so that we can continue to deliver value? This is probably where we were about to go in our talk, where we talk about scaling demand and not scaling, or scaling demand versus scaling delivery. 8 minutes. So the way, I'm going to go back to the phrases we used earlier. Focus on the flow of the work, the product, what it takes to move the work forward, not necessarily keeping the people on the teams busy. So anytime the work's not flowing well and we have a handoff to another team, that's a sign that there's a skill set lacking, or we never really had a cross-functional team to begin with. We just have many component teams that have to coordinate all the time. And maybe even worse, we have separate product backlogs that they all work in. So now we're trying to manage all these dependencies across the teams. So to eliminate the functional silos, which I like the word you chose, sometimes clients will ask us, can you help us manage the dependencies? And Jeff and I will say, no, thank you. We don't want to help you manage dependencies. We want you to remove the dependencies. So to eliminate the functional silos, you have to collapse those teams into a cross-functional team. So you take the skill sets you need. Let's say you have 5 teams. You take the skill sets from each team and put them onto one team. And if you have more people and you want to keep going, you do that exercise again. Grab a skill set from this team, a skill set from this team, a skill set, put them on a team, and then it's like a copy and paste operation. You're making like-sized cross-functional teams. And then they all work under one product backlog.
And that product definition is where a lot of companies struggle, because they define a product as a system. They define it as a component, like a database team maybe, or even it could be a Salesforce team, or it could be a billing team or something along those lines, but they don't sell those products to a customer. So 3 rules of thumb to think about when you're thinking about what your product definition are. Who are your customers? Who are you serving external to your organization? Who are the people doing the work? Because we want them to be the same. And then who are the people, what are those things inside of your organization? If it's a digital product, we're talking code bases, like where there are connections. If we're talking non-digital, it's like, what other things are we talking about that are dependent on each other? What infrastructure things do we have in place? And maybe we should align around something along that, whatever that problem we're solving for that market, for that customer with these people. That might be a product definition we would go with. And generally, if you go with broader product definitions over narrow product definitions, you have more ability to change quickly, depending on what happens in the marketplace. So an example could be if you're Microsoft, and let's just say you had a team working on all their different products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, right? Yammer, all the things that they have. If you say each product is one team, one product, that's one way to organize. But if you say Office 365 is our product, now when COVID hits and we say Zoom's kicking our butt and we need to enhance Teams and there's a huge market demand for it, and huge opportunity, we can move all the people we have on these teams, these cross-functional problem-solving teams, to work on the Teams application. And you have that flexibility. Very hard to do that in an organization if you have narrow product definitions, because people won't have the broad skill set to move to whatever problem's the most important.
So just for a visual, if the circles are cross-functional teams on the top, right? I'll do cross-functional teams here. And that's a product backlog. Our response time is improved. And the bottom are component teams, specialty teams, right? And these aren't necessarily product backlogs. These are, I would call these team backlogs, even though a lot of the world calls those product backlogs. I would say, no, those aren't product backlogs. Those are team backlogs. Because let's say that team, like Jeff said, that's a testing team. You don't sell testing to your customers. It's just a skill set that you've organized your people around. So I'm going to draw a line through the bottom. Don't do that on the bottom. And there's a delay, but I drew a big X. There you can see it. If you want to scale teams the way it was intended, you still have a product backlog as close to what you sell in the market, and you organize cross-functional teams that are like-sized underneath, and they coordinate at the team level, not up at these team backlog levels. And you have one product owner and one product backlog, many teams. If you do the thing on the bottom of if you scale on the bottom half of that, just expect that you're going to have a nightmare of handoffs, delays, coordination cost, confusion from stakeholders. Like it'll be weird to have a sprint review because you won't really know what you're looking at because it's work in process, because most of those teams only produce work in process. Now, obviously, we need more context to this in your unique situation, but this is what Jeff and I do when we meet with clients. We map out their current state and we paint a picture of what a future state looks like using something like Scrum. Was there another question? We have 2 minutes, so I don't know how much more we want to pull from the questions, Danusha. I'm going to maybe check in with you because you might be a wrap-up.
Yeah, I think we have 2 more minutes, so there's 2 more questions. I don't know if you can do
Rapid fire? Sure.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the most important element to consider while scaling agility across a large organization? What I just said.
Yep.
Did we answer that one, or was the previous? That was maybe the previous one.
I think yeah.
Yeah, I think it's scaling delivery instead of scaling demand.
Yes.
The top is scaling your delivery and the bottom is scaling demand. You're going to just create a bunch of work that's going to get handed off and delays, and you're going to have coordination costs on the bottom. And so it's going to actually, because you're very specialized, you're going to create work in that specialty. But if you focus on the customer problems like above, you're going to scale delivery of problems, like a delivery of solutions, I guess, of problems is what you'll scale. So focus on that.
And then the last question, if you are a lover of quality product, which of the certifications would you recommend, Scrum Master or Product Owner?
I was going to say
that's a tough
AP.
question, but Product Owner, if you care about the quality of something you're trying to bring to life, I think Product Owner. Scrum Master, you're signing up for a change agent role, a real boat rocker, someone who's going to, you have a lot of patience and persistence to push change forward, potentially for the rest of your career, because it should it's never ending, continuous improvement. So I would say they're very, very different roles. Product owner is much more about seizing opportunities in a market, maximizing value for your organization. if you have any UX background, that can really help you as a product owner with a very experimentational mindset paired with that, and real care for the customer. So I don't know if that answered your question. I probably need like we'd need like a coffee chat probably to find out exactly what you're after, but hopefully that helps
There's
out
this
a little bit.
there's this class called Applying Professional Scrum that Chad and I teach, and it's really for everybody. And it's like, what is Scrum, applying it. So we teach it and then you use it and you build a product in the class. And I think that's a good class for anyone, because it's just like Scrum isn't about just doing a bunch of stuff and delivering. It's like high quality stuff, and what is done really mean. And you actually, not only do we talk about it, but you have to do it. And by doing, you learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for the engagement, the questions, your time after a work day. We really appreciate it. We run a meetup and we're always very appreciative of people who show up. So thank you so much for having us. We had a blast. Thank you, Harold, Denise.
Thank you to you, Jeff and Chad. Yeah, thanks.
So before
thanks
you go,
for all the sharing. Yeah.
You can also drop the link to your meetup in the chat. So if anybody wants to join your meetup, you can just drop it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll probably be when you're sleeping. Well, we run ours at 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I don't know exactly what that would be, but it would be very late at night for you, I believe.
Yeah, +8, +9. Yeah.
I will throw a link out there. We are running a conference on August 17th, and it's a free conference. We're trying to get different Agilists across the world to come and talk. So it's all day. So even if you only make half, because that, our morning, your evening, like that might be something that works, for you too. Awesome.
Well, thanks a lot, Chad and Jeff. It's been very helpful, and we've learned a lot. So I saw a question as well. You can follow Chad and Jeff on LinkedIn as well. And we have different. So I think Jeff as well has a podcast. So there's lots of updates. So anyone who wants to follow them, and for us as well, we've put it in the chat. So Agile Mauritius. So we are also now on different social media. Please feel free to follow us. And so we have more coming up. And thanks a lot for your time, I would say. So have a nice evening, everyone.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night or day.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, bye.